You know, if I had a nickel for every time I made a video on a game based on the alternate history of a nuclear accident, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. I say that because of the topic of this week's video, Atomfall, a first-person survival action game. Now you're probably thinking, but Mojo, isn't that Fallout London? To which I say, wrong, dipshit! And I'm gonna get more in depth with it right now, but first I need to talk about the developer and how their work has influenced their decision on this. But before I do that, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps the channel out a lot, and I need it because the last few videos have been getting binned by the algorithm. So it would mean a lot if you did that and maybe left a comment. Please, I'm desperate! Now that I got that out of my system, let's get into it. Atomfall was developed by Rebellion Developments. For those not in the know, they're the developers of the Sniper Elite series of stealth shooter games that have been running since 2005. Hell, they've had a release as recently as 2 months ago. But the thing that I didn't know about Rebellion is how far back their history actually stretched. Because they go all the way back to 1992 and have quite the resume under their belts. Case in point, the 2000 Alien vs. Predator game, the Evil Genius games, the Zombie Army games, and that's just the notable stuff they've done. They've even branched out into doing other mediums like comic books, tabletop games, and even movies. They've even been the publisher of 2000 AD since the year 2000. Fun fact, they are the UK's biggest contribution to science fiction not named Doctor Who, which also kickstarted the careers of Grant Morrison, Garth Ennis, and my favorite grumpy old man, alleged warlock and death-frightening scion that's pierced beyond the veil, Alan Moore. Rebellion publishing 2000 AD I didn't know about until I started researching for this video. Speaking of, if anyone at Rebellion is watching this, please talk to whoever holds the film rights to Judge Dredd, because I want a Dredd sequel, goddammit! And while I'm proselytizing, go watch Dredd from 2012. It's 95 minutes of all killer, no filler. It would make my day. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing up Rebellion's development history in context to Atomfall is that they're really good at making games that have systems and designs that open up for a lot of choices for the player to engage with. And a good way this plays out is in Atomfall's narrative. Atomfall is set 5 years after the Windscale nuclear accident, the worst in the United Kingdom's history, and one of the worst in the history of the world. This and the United Kingdom's downplaying and heavy censorship is leaned into for Atomfall's narrative, as the entire game is set in the surrounding areas of the Windscale accident. You take control of a silent, nameless nobody who wakes up in a bunker and meets a guy in a hazmat suit who's bleeding out. After helping him with his injuries, he tells you to find something called the Interchange, and from there, you are set loose upon the world. The first thing that caught my eye about the way Atomfall handles narrative is through the character dialogue. While a lot of it is of the talking head variety, the dialogue options are inferred by the tone by which it is said and what is actually said. And as someone who has a hard time differentiating that stuff a lot of the time in games, I appreciate it. It lets me choose to play my character in a way that I intended it to be played, not for me to say what I think is the good guy option, only to be caught off guard by it being actually the douche canoe option. It also helps that the game is incredibly well written. Everything from the character dialogue, to your dialogue choices, to journal entries, to notes, etc. are all compelling in different ways. It also helps that a lot of it is quintessentially British, specifically the North. You've got thick northern accents for days and they all sound lovely to me, a person who does not interact with British people all that often. I wish the British were real. To talk about another way that the writing is compelling, I need to talk about how it's tied to the way Atomfall is structured and how it plays. When you get out of the initial bunker in Atomfall, you walk a short path and see a phone booth with its phone ringing. You go up to answer it. You hear a weird, freaky voice telling you to go to the Interchange, that Oberon must die, and wonder what the King of the Fairies has to do with this. And from there, you get your first lead. Leads are the main way in which the narrative and exploration in Atomfall unfolds. Rather than relying on map markers, golden trails of breadcrumbs, or even the occasional, "Hey, listen!" Atomfall gives you a series of hints and a map to discern where you have to go. And this ain't no bullshit video game map, it's an actual map with coordinates and shit. Sometimes you get the exact coordinates from the lead itself, but the rest of the time, it's inferred based on the writing to give you a good idea where to go. And this is what I mean when I say Atomfall is incredibly well written, because it kind of has to be. The hints in the journal and going back and forth between it and the map to cross-reference each other makes for a weirdly compelling gameplay loop. And this also factors into the actual traversal of areas. Here's an example. After getting the creepy phone call, you notice that there's 2 divergent forks in the road. The one on the left goes to a mine that's controlled by a group of bandits called the Outlaws. The path on the right features a crashed helicopter and an entrance to a mine. If you go with the former, you learn more about the area and have some challenging stealth ahead of you, and if you go with the latter, you get a separate lead for a cache of items, an entrance to the mines, and a conversation with the miner who will give you both a metal detector and more insight into the area. And both of these offered me different routes to get into the interchange. And when I finally got there, I realized that the interchange was powered down and needed new power batteries to get the facility back up, and to kill Oberon after getting another creepy phone call. From there, Atomfall lays its structure bare. Get new power batteries, charge up the facility, and either kill Oberon or find some other way out of the quarantine zone. This takes you through 5 different semi-open world areas of the smaller variety that encourage exploration, because you don't know what there is. There's the quarries of the outlaw-controlled S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the village of Wyndham with its military occupation and various townfolks and secrets, Casterfell Woods and its druidic enclaves, the picturesque fields of S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and the deeper levels of the interchange itself. A major part of the game's challenge comes from both navigating your way to and through these areas, and whether or not you decide to be a complete murder bastard about it. And this ties into the difficulty balancing in the rest of the game. When playing on the recommended difficulty, Atomfall is a game that encourages, nay, expects you to sneak your way through the areas and only resort to combat if it's an absolute last resort. Enemies will swarm you and hunt you to the ends of the earth. You can get around this by simply running away. Remember, if shit sucks, just hit the bricks! Okay, I know I'm memeing right now, but there's a kernel of truth in there. You need to be careful and pick and choose your fights because you ain't got nearly enough ammo to shoot your way out of whatever sticky situation you get yourself into. So I decided to swallow my pride and lower the difficulty of combat to casual. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you can customize the difficulty for combat, resources, and navigation separately. Which is good if you have different priorities, like me, who sees combat in Atomfall as more of a failure state as opposed to a feature compared to the navigation and narrative. It kinda lines up with how Sniper Elite works, because in those games, especially the later ones, are more like stealth games where you need to sneak past a bunch of fascists to assassinate a high-value target. This doesn't mean that combat is bad, though. It's actually pretty good. It's a nice mix of melee and gunplay that's dictated by this little bar down here. This is your heart rate. Yes, you heard me, heart rate. You see, in Atomfall, just about everything you do is determined by your heart rate, and doing things causes it to rise and fall. You need to keep an eye on it because the second it gets too high, you start to make more passive noise, enemies notice you faster, and you can't aim your guns as steadily. It's a really cool take on a stamina system, and I kind of want more games to just steal this feature. Please? It would be so good in the proper context. A lot of these add up to make a gameplay loop that is very satisfying, from taking and checking leads, to exploring, to scavenging, to fighting, and it feels great. But there is at least one part that doesn't feel as good, and that's the skill system. You don't level up in Atomfall to gain skill points. Instead, you need to find items called skill stimulants to accumulate them and spend them. But a lot of the skills you get feel like they're so incremental that it doesn't even matter, or are so game-changing that they should be full-on actual gameplay mechanics. Case in point, unlocking weapon upgrades. That feels like it should be separated, but that's just me though. So for the majority of my time playing, I just didn't bother with them. There's also crafting as well, but I think about it so little because it's perfectly cromulent, and crafting is just kind of an expected feature in games these days. The stuff I mentioned actually doesn't take anything away from Atomfall, because the parts that work so goddamn well that it makes up for it a lot of the time. And one of those things is the way the game looks. Atomfall isn't the most technically impressive game in the world, but it sure is pretty to look at. It reminds me of a less devastated version of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 in that you see a lot of dilapidated buildings and whatnot, but the beauty really shines through. There are some parts of the game that get really goddamn weird in a good way, chief among them being these robots you see stomping around. And these cool looking glowing mushrooms. Atomfall is also really British. I know that sounds silly considering that Rebellion is themselves based in the UK, but Atomfall is quaint in that you can reduce your heart rate with a spot of Earl Grey tea, or recover health from eating a Cornish pasty, or using whatever alcohol you find in a pub to make various kinds of bombs. I just think that stuff is funny and endearing. Same goes with the side characters. Each one I've run into has either been cool or some form of interesting, and really, that's the kind of thing you need in a game like this. Those combined with the amazing attention to detail all add up to make a world that you'll want to spend time in. One where you can comb over it for secrets that one might have missed. One where you can feel like you're a part of it. A world that is just so distinctly weird in its own way, and yes, while I know that Fallout London came out last year, I made an entire video on it, Atomfall's got stuff that you see more in The Wicker Man than in a Fallout game.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes! Ah!
Atomfall is a game that proposes a very specific style of play, with some slight tweaks to make if you need it, but never falters from its path. Its take on an alt-history nuclear accident isn't as weird or bleak as the S.T.A.L.K.E.R series, but at the end of the day, it isn't really trying to be. Its narrative, structure, and writing are the most ambitious I've seen in a while, and even if some elements don't fully contribute to it, it at least makes a compelling case for itself. If you're on the fence, I recommend checking it out on Game Pass. If you have that service, you won't be disappointed. Especially since the game takes at most 10 to 15 hours to get through depending on how off the beaten path you go. If that sounds at all appealing, I recommend that you tuck in with Atomfall. It's a bloody good time.